The New York Jets are going to need to address the defensive side of the ball in free agency as well as the draft. But with the draft more than a month away and free agency less than 2 weeks away, in today's video, we're going to be talking about who and what defensive targets should the New York Jets have this upcoming free agency period.
Inside, and a beauty! Hall running free! Breece Hall inside the 10! He's gonna score!
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and you heard me right. Today, we're going to be going over our defensive targets, guys that I like that we should bring in for the defensive side of the ball in free agency. We know that the New York Jets just had a top 5 defense. If you're a fan of DVOA, and I really am, we have the number 2 ranked defense according to DVOA, and I am a believer in the philosophy that if you can turn a strength into a superpower, that's what you should do. It's not about getting both sides of the football to be good. It's about having one side of the football so good that the other side can be lackluster. They just need to keep you in it. It's kind of like what Kansas City is doing, right? The only thing that defense needs to do is not give up 30 points because they know offensively that offense is going to score points. They believe in turning their strength into a superpower, and when you have Superman under center in Kansas City, that makes a lot of sense. Well, the New York Jets have the building blocks of the Justice League right now in the defensive side of the ball with Batman and Superman, and to make it very clear so that you understand the dynamic there, Quinnen Williams is Batman, Sauce Gardner is Superman in my breakdown, and then you've got the Flash. Our defense has all of the building blocks to be an elite unit, and they already are. So let's just go from being the number 2 ranked defense in the NFL to by far and away the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL. And how do you start that? Let's talk about safety. Safety right now is the biggest position of need. I think every Jet fan can agree that they're not in love with our safety room. Whether you're a fan of Jordan Whitehead or not, or Tony Adams or not, it doesn't matter. You can look at that safety room and be like, you know what? That is the area that this team needs the most improvement in. And the great thing is that this safety class is incredibly good in free agency. And there is an argument to be had to draft a safety, but that doesn't mean that you can't also sign a safety. We're going to lose Jordan Poyer, and there's a reality of the situation that Lamarcus Joyner, that Whitehead might be a cap casualty. So let's talk about the safety class. Who are the guys that I'm interested in? Who can we bring in? There's a lot of guys, so let's hop right into it. I think the number 1 name on everybody's list when it comes to safeties that they're interested in, Jessie Bates III skyrockets to the top of that list, and it's with good reason. He is one of the better safeties in the NFL, and bringing him into a scheme that benefits his skill set like the New York Jets have, and the fact that he's 26 years old makes a ton of sense. And when you're looking at what his contract might look like, my expectation is that it'll be anywhere in the $12 to $13 million range, which is right around what we would be able to spend in free agency on one big name guy. And if safety is the room that we decide that we're going to go big at, it makes a lot of sense that Jessie Bates is that guy. Now, if we're looking for a cheaper, shorter term rental when it comes to free agency, Jordan Poyer is the name that jumps right to the top of my list. He already lives in New York. He's already familiar with the scheme because we run a very similar scheme to what Buffalo does. His skill set would match perfectly with what we use and how we would use him. And at 32 years old, you're not going to give him more than a 2-year deal. And it's, I don't think, going to be really worth anything more than $9 or $10 million. So bringing him in would still give you a little bit of money to go out and bring in other guys, where if you went to go get Jessie Bates, that's it. You're splashing all of your money on one guy. Now, when we look at other, maybe not as big names, but still would be excellent additions to this team, you're looking at Jimmy Ward, who could come in and literally just be a Lamarcus Joyner replacement. Come in, 1-year deal, really inexpensive deal, can fit in, knows the scheme, is familiar with our coaching staff, can come in and play at a high level. That is an option and actually a pathway that I'm really kind of leaning towards because I'm a big Tony Adams fan. I think that he can be our safety of the future. I think he just needs 1 more year of development and being a backup. Then you've got guys like Adrian Amos of the Green Bay Packers, who also could be a rental, familiar with our scheme, and can come in and play at a relatively high level. Now, neither Jimmy Ward or Adrian Amos are like these super game-breaking safeties, but when you look at it, that's not necessarily what I'm looking for in in the safety room when it comes to like what we're trying to do. The other option there is, I believe, CJ Gardner-Johnson might be hitting free agency. I think he's technically under contract with the Eagles, but he's going to hit free agency. He's also an option, but I put him in that tier with like Von Bell, Devin McCourty, maybe not Devin McCourty, but like Von Bell and like CJ Gardner-Johnson are kind of in that same group where it's just like, hey, they're not the elite guys or the really, really good high-end 1-year rentals or 2-year rentals, but they're solid. And if you can just give me solid at safety, which is something that we didn't have all of last year, I'd be cool with that as well. I think the 2 big targets for me, if we're targeting safety, should be Von Bell or Jimmy Ward. I think they both would make contractual sense. And if you went with Von Bell, yes, while he's a little bit older, he's probably got more time in him than a guy like Jimmy Ward, who's already on the other side of 30. Now, cornerback is an interesting room because we don't necessarily need a cornerback on the top end of the spectrum, and I don't think we should be targeting anyone in free agency when it comes to the cornerback room. But if you were to look and say, you know what, we want to replace a guy like Bryce Hall, or maybe, we don't want to pay Justin Hardy $2.5 million or something along those lines. There are cornerbacks out there that you can probably bring in for $1 million who could maybe play that role relatively well. But I don't think we're really going to be targeting cornerback in free agency. Now, linebacker is another position that a lot of people are going to look at and say this should be a priority. And they're absolutely right, because I don't know if we're going to be able to afford to bring back guys like Quincy Williams or a fan favorite in Quan Alexander. And the biggest reason I don't think we're going to be able to bring those guys back is because the Texans exist and they hired DeMeco Ryans and they have a bunch of money and they are desperately in need of linebackers as well. If you're telling me that if I'm DeMeco and you're saying, you know what, I can bring in 2 guys that played in this system at a relatively high level, we have the money to pay them, and they're going to be good culture guys, good fits, and they're familiar with my scheme and terminology already, sign me up. And I'm familiar with one of them, with Quan Alexander, because I was his coach back in San Francisco. It makes too much sense for guys like that to go and transition to try to go chase the bag in Houston. And if that happens, that means we just lost a massive chunk of our linebacker room. Now, there are some high-level linebackers that are going to become available, guys that we can bring in on big money deals, guys like Deion Jones, maybe a Zach Cunningham. Like, these guys are coming, they're going to hit free agency, and they're maybe guys that we can look at if we really just want to go 2 massive hitters in the linebacker room and go CJ Mosley and Deion Jones. And while they're both going to be, older prospects, they can both come in and play at a really high level. But then there's also guys like project guys that you can bring in who probably aren't going to command a lot of money, or guys who only have 1 year of success that might need a 1-year deal in a new situation to prove that they can do it. Guys that come to my mind when it comes to that side of it is guys like Kazir White from the Philadelphia Eagles, who had himself an exceptional year, but this is the first year he's been this good. Another guy like that might be, needs a prove-it deal, maybe it just didn't work in his team, is Devin Bush of the Steelers. These are guys that you look at and you go, you know what? Maybe if we can bring TJ Edwards out of Philadelphia as well, I forgot his name. these are guys that you can look at and you can go, you know what? Maybe if we bring them in, they can fit in our scheme and our coaches can get them playing right. Now, if you're trying to go long-term, big splash, we're replacing CJ Mosley essentially, and this is going to be his heir apparent, and the guys in the background are going to play second fiddle to him. I think the only name that's out there that I'm super interested in is Tremaine Edmunds of the Buffalo Bills. I think he's going to command anywhere from $10 to $12 million, which is exactly the amount of money, like I mentioned before, that the New York Jets could probably afford to pay one big name free agent. Our linebacker room is a room that needs some help. Tremaine Edmunds plays an insanely high number of snaps and doesn't miss time with injury or anything like that, really. Outside of this last season, he had some games that he missed. But this is a big, big target, and now you can have a two-headed monster and an heir apparent to CJ Mosley all at the same time. CJ is going to be on this team, and we're trying to probably restructure him to get him to retire here. Tremaine Edmunds can carry the team and carry this linebacker room while CJ loses a step, can even take the Mike role if he needs to, so CJ can step into the will and not have to be that fast and that dynamic if he can't, because he's older. But also it gives a safety net for guys like Jamien Sherwood and the other linebackers that we currently have on the roster to really come into their own. And now we can start building that pipeline again and address linebacker in the draft in the later rounds and really, like I said, build that pipeline. I love the idea of bringing in a Tremaine Edmunds to this team. I just don't know if the Jets are going to make a big splash at linebacker. I just don't see it. I see that the bigger opportunity would probably be safety, and that's where you would target, and then you would just linebacker by committee. We were able to get solid snaps out of guys like Marcel Harris. We were able to find Quincy Williams and Quan Alexander in the trash heap from other teams and all of that stuff. It makes a lot of sense that that's where you would go, and that you would just kind of leave linebacker up in the air. And then the last position that we got to talk about is the defensive line. Two places where I think the New York Jets, with the interior and the edge, where the New York Jets need help. I think edge is going to be addressed more in the draft. I'm looking in the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th round to bring in someone to replace the bottom end of our defensive line rotation. I think the top end is perfectly fine, even with us losing Carl Lawson. JJ steps up, Bryce Huff steps up, Michael Clemens steps up. What we need is someone to fill in that 20% of snaps on the bottom end. And there's a lot of guys in this edge class, because this edge class is so deep. You can see that in the combine, that it really just makes sense to leave that to the draft. So there isn't really voice crack. There isn't really a lot of edges that I look at in this class that scream out, oh, we need to bring this guy in. He's so good. Man, my voice is cracking a lot. I've been talking a lot. But that being said, interior of the defensive line is a massive need. The only players that we have on the interior of the defensive line going into next season right now is Tanzel Smart and Quinnen Williams. And that's it. We're going to lose, or we're expected to lose, Sheldon Rankins, Solomon Thomas, Nathan Shepard, Isaiah Mack, like all of these guys. You didn't even know Isaiah Mack was on the team, but we're losing all of our interior defensive linemen. We literally don't have anyone not named Quinnen Williams and Tanzel Smart on the team. And now, while I think Tanzel Smart is ready to take that jump and take Nathan Shepard's job as a rotational number 4 interior defensive line, we probably should bring Sheldon Rankins back. I think he deserved it. I think he can probably earned a little bit of a raise, but I think he might just want to stay in New York and play in New York because, this is the team where he finally had some success, and he has a really, really big role. He plays 50% of the snaps on our defensive line and with that rotation. Now, there are a couple of guys that I look at with this free agency class that I might be interested in bringing in for the interior of the defensive line. Now, none of these guys are going to be big signings, but guys like Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph, Tyson Alualu, are all guys that I look at and I go, you know what? Maybe they kind of fit. Jordan Phillips, I forgot about him, out of the Bills. All of these guys fill that kind of low end, not very expensive, and can probably come to this team and play a lot of meaningful snaps. I would not be surprised if we brought in Nathan Shepard and Sheldon Rankins back promoted Tanzel Smart, and then went to a guy like maybe a Linval Joseph, like maybe an Ndamukong Suh, guys who are only going to be making $2-3 million a year, and say, you know what, we're going to bring you in. We're going to really give you the opportunity to just be a rotational guy. And there you go. Now you've got a deeper edge, interior defensive line group, which is something that we really saw struggles at. And now you can have a better opportunity to relax some of your edge guys, play some of the interior guys, and have a better rotation there, and all doing it while not being that expensive. The defense is where I would love to see a lot of free agent dollars spent in my eyes. I think if we can get impact guys to come in immediately, and like I said, single-handedly solidify the number one defense in the NFL, just hands down, by improving the interior defensive line rotation, by bringing in a stud at linebacker and a stud at safety, that is the way that I would go. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And last but not least, go Jets.